Over the past few years, the term toxic masculinity has become a buzzword in activism circles. One often wonders what positive masculinity looks like in an era where the masculine also seems to be grappling with its own role. Join me as we chat with Brian, who has gone through a personal journey that has led to a clearer understanding of his own masculinity in a world that seems to have shunned it. Brian, the reason I asked you to come through is because you are one of men in my life that I've seen who exhibits certain traits, personality traits, that show how comfortable you are in your masculinity, how comfortable you are to be a man, a manly man, and yet you still have your gentle, your sweet, your understanding, your nurturing side. You haven't chosen one over the other. You've kind of like said, in its completion, I am this human being. So I wanted to have a conversation with you about that because it appears that we are in a current state where men are almost being put into corners to man up. And I was interested from a masculine point of view about all of these things that are happening to the male.
I think the biggest question has been actually, how do we identify ourselves in the society that we are in today?
Yeah.
Our biggest problem is that the mentoring process actually had a break at some point. Our forefathers had an opportunity to teach our fathers, and our fathers never had an opportunity to teach us. So our grandfathers had to go to the mines, and then our fathers had to fight the apartheid system. So there was never an opportunity for us to learn, to actually take in the men. Let's have a sit down. Let me teach you how to become a man. But
And ka Setswana go na le bogoera.
that's it. And the biggest thing is that we never got that opportunity. You know, when democracy happened, we were all sent into the hellhole. I'll call it the hellhole. And everybody was saying, find yourself in that space. And when we tried to find ourselves in that space, we had friends who motivated us in a different direction. Your mother was also trying to groom you in a different direction.
Yeah.
And the confusion starts there. So the question of why we find ourselves here has to be addressed from where we come from first.
Yeah.
Because it's easy for us to say trash,
Yes.
but we need to understand how trash got here.
Yeah.
I'm not making excuses for some of the wrongdoings that are happening, but it's similar to this. If your frame of mind was exposed to only two things,
Yeah.
you'll only have two options to worry about. Or
You
to
only
think about.
have two things to draw from.
Yeah. And once you were exposed to the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth, then only will you be able to expand your mind to get to those options. But at the moment, if your dad was violent, then my second exposure was on the streets.
Yep.
It was violent. There was a gangster. The gangster was the coolest guy in
3 to 5.
112. So that defined my second option.
Yeah.
And my first option was defined by my dad.
Yeah.
Now you expect me 5 years down the line to have different other options. I don't.
I don't even know they exist.
Thank you very much. I
Because-
see them on TV.
Not even really.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the portrayal of the black male
Yes.
on TV,
Violent.
We're not given many
It's
scenarios.
violent. That's why it was such a big shock when everybody says, but we got Black Panther.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Because like suddenly, the black man now was a hero.
Yes.
And he had good intentions. You know, he was loving, he was looking after his community, and he wanted to build a family, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So if we have more of that, then I will start having some options to look into. But I was lucky because my grandfather became my best friend.
Yes.
My grandfather had a role to play on the tender side.
Yeah.
And how I look at life and how I see life from a spiritual point of view as well, from a physical point of view. He always asked me, when are you getting married? because he wants me to build a family, because he believes the family is such an important thing. For us to try and define the male, I would say let's give the males first an opportunity to find mentors that can reshape their minds, and then we can define them, because we would have given them the tools at first. Then if they still make the same mistakes that they've done, then they're not willing to learn, for me.
Are we talking generations here?
Not necessarily. I only spent, as much as my grandfather has been my friend, it took me the past 2 years to understand what he was talking about. So it only took me 2 years. Also, it also depends on how destroyed are they? Because there are those who are much more destroyed than I was.
But wouldn't you say that you're an anomaly?
I am, because I've seen the violence. My
Yes.
dad was a violent person.
No, you're very different now to
what I
what
was,
you
yeah.
were.
But I
when-
was an angry child.
Yes, you were.
Because that's what I saw.
You were very violent.
So I decided to make that U-turn. But I needed to go through all the process as well, because I was Buddhist at some point.
Yes. we
So
were.
Buddhism also helped me in the journey of being calm and also finding myself and letting go of the anger.
Yeah.
Now imagine somebody who's been living with anger for the past 15 years.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy to say, tomorrow I want you to wake up and snap out of it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's what we expect of them.
Which is why I'm asking. So are you saying be patient?
Be patient.
But for how long, Brian?
I can't predict time, because all individuals are different.
Yeah.
So each and every individual will be taking the journey, even though we're taking the journey together. I will get off the train station earlier.
True.
They will get off the train station a little bit later. But eventually we are looking at finding the actual solution to the problem.
What is the solution, Brian?
I don't think there's one size fits all solution.
Yeah.
But I think the solution, the one thing that I will always advise people is to really understand who they are. And that's what it took for me, to really understand that I was angry.
Yeah.
To see it in myself, how I treated people, for me to say, I want to change it. But if you're not going to see it first, there's no way you're going to find change.
Please tell me about the identifying that you wanted to change. What was it in you, in your being, that no longer served you and put you in a position where you're saying, I want to change?
Funny, it was not even how I was identified as,
Yeah.
or how I identified myself. It's how I felt about myself. Because I would say to you, I don't care how people think of me.
Yes.
So identity really didn't matter.
Yeah.
But every time I went home, and when I looked at myself, myself in the mirror, and I said, but do you really want to be this? And I knew I was not happy.
What was making you unhappy?
I think I knew I was a better person.
There was a better version
There
of
was
you.
a better version of me. You know what I'm saying? I knew I was a better person. And I wanted to find him, but somehow what I knew was a stumbling block to get me to that level.
Yeah.
And once you start being true to yourself, you say, why am I not getting it? You see, that's the main question. Why am I not getting it?
What is it in me that is not allowing that to happen?
You are always the stumbling block. No one else is.
Yeah.
So only you can change you to better you. There's no guru that's going to come. There's no Brian that's going to give you advice. Only you know what you're going through. And I always say, once you get home and you sit alone and you're truthful to yourself, all the answers are there.
Are we speaking from a place of privilege, though? Because if there are bread and butter issues and stomach issues, stomach politics,
Yeah.
do you have time to sit there and think about these things, Brian?
The biggest problem that a lot of people have done is that they define themselves according to what they didn't have. So let not the lack of bread and butter define it. You need to still find yourself, because that might be a solution to get out of the bread and butter anywhere. Your bread and butter might not, you might not leave that space by finding a job, because you might end up back where you are. If I'm a violent person and I'm an angry person, even if I do find a job, I'll get fired very easily because you're angry. So, the boss says at work, you're not supposed to leave at 5 o'clock, you want to leave. But because you still have anger issues, you now retaliate. Once you retaliate, something might happen even bigger. So you need to deal with the problem. It starts with being truthful with you.
How did you go about it, Brian? This evolution that you went through?
So my violence, my anger was against the world rather than against any individual, because I felt that the world dealt me all the jokers and never dealt me any kings and queens for
And
my
you
life.
deserved it.
And I felt that I deserved it. Until a certain point where at work I had a scuffle And that's why I don't want to mention names.
Yeah.
Work at a scuffle. But eventually after that, I realized I was actually a violent person. And that's how I then met somebody who was in Buddhism. And I said, I actually want to try this. I've seen people meditate and sit around, and I felt I wanted that peace.
Yes.
And I think all of us want that. And that's the highlight of life.
Yeah.
People just want peace. And that's what I wanted as well.
Yeah.
So I think I wanted something better for myself.
Yeah.
And not because I was sitting at a place of privilege at that time.
Yeah.
I was not a privilege at that time. I was also looking for bread and butter. But I needed to ask those questions because I knew how I felt. I knew I was angry.
Have you also found that a lot of men use substances to quiet that moment of self-reflection?
I think society has pushed them there. Where I was, I'm going to make an example of me. Where I was when I was angry, society or environments at that time allowed me to change. If you are sitting in an environment that is surrounded by violence, and you are violent, and you're trying to find solutions
to this violence,
you're going back to the same violence. So the only thing you'll ever find is just violence in maybe different forms.
Yeah.
So substance then ends up becoming a scapegoat, I would say.
Or an escape.
An escape on its own, you know?
So what should they be doing rather?
Sometimes if you really want it, you have... So you can always look at it and say, like, for example, when I chose my grandfather, I looked at him and I said, I kind of like who he is.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to him and ask for advice.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I went and found it. He didn't come to me and say, come here, I'll teach you.
Let me teach you, yeah.
I said, and I do this with him all the time. I say, let me buy you lunch. I'm buying knowledge every single time. So I'll say, come, let's sit on Saturday. He says, I'm coming through. Every time I'm listening, I'm taking notes. So I'm pushing myself to get knowledge. So a lot of us have got to a point where we are...
complacent?
And we are not ready to go out there and want it. We are sitting and saying it was going to come to us. It's never going to come to you. You have to go out and find it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's similar to a woman who's been beaten up or abused. All we say to her all the time is that, leave, go out. Once you go out, you'll find something different and then you'll do things differently. But if you stay or you hang around other abused people, you'll find it as normal.
Yeah.
Because everybody's speaking about it as if it's normal.
As if it's, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you need to come out and sit with people who don't see it as normal for you to start thinking of it as not normal.
Now that you've brought up that scenario, obviously violence towards children and women is predominantly from men.
Yeah.
But violence against men is also predominantly from men.
Yeah.
And we seem to be missing this.
I'm not going to name the minister. The minister once said, put in a word, she would know it if I say it. And she wrote an article. She didn't write the article, obviously. Somebody wrote it for her. But I think she was putting a point across to say the same males who are violent were raised by women. So how do we blame them? Because it's the same woman who's raising this violent man. So the teachings, and I'm not saying the teachings of violence come from the woman, but I'm saying there's something that they're not doing as well to actually change the mindset of this youngster not to do what he needs to do at the end.
I will openly and honestly say that as women, we find it very convenient to turn around and put blame on men while we are raising male children, and we are the same people who look at our boy children and we call our boy children izinja, trash and whatever, and we treat them in that manner. We do it. We do it so much. I watch us as mothers victimizing our sons, treating them like garbage, and then they turn around and become this garbage. And then we, same mothers, turn around and go, oh my gosh, what happened? We're very quick to cry foul, and none of us actually want to sit there and go, wait a minute, what was my role in this whole thing?
This is going to be a Twitter fight, yo.
It is fine.
Yeah.
We've been discussing a lot about what it seems is choices. And it appears that a lot of men, in my opinion, looking on, don't understand that they have choices.
They do. It starts with identity. Remember what we spoke about earlier. So it starts with identity. For example, if you read a book, The Alchemist,
Yes.
and why a lot of people say it changed their lives,
It changed my life.
is because there was a line where the shepherd boy met an old man, and he says, "I want to travel the world, but I don't want to lose becoming a shepherd." And he says, "But you can't."
Can't do both.
Thank you. But you always be a shepherd, even if you come back 2 years from now on. So it's something that you know. So our biggest problem is that we have an identity, and we think that if we change or we try something new, we will lose this. But you won't lose it. This is you. So the identity becomes the problem for change, because society says I should be this thing. And that's why I have a problem with identities, where they're saying the male figure is supposed to be this thing.
Or as a Zulu man, you must.
You know, and the biggest challenge about that is that the identity is according to who? And that's the question we need to ask. So let's move away from the identities.
It's quite refreshing.
Yeah. So let's move away from the identities, because identities are basically a string of words that identifies what is not. It's an identification to try and make sense of what is. But what is not the words. So if I say that's a table, table doesn't define that as a table. It's the table could be something else in definition, but the wording, we've taken the wording and made it a definition of that thing. But the truth of the matter is that the table is basically just a tree that's been cut
Into a certain shape.
So I can call it a tree. Will I be wrong though?
No, because it is part of the tree.
But you defined it as a table, I defined it as a tree. Is anybody wrong there?
No.
So definitions is what kills us. And that's why we start becoming trash and dog, because we're not meeting a certain expectation and perception that has been populated by the female species. Say, we want them to be like this. But what if we can't? We can't be like how you want us to be.
What if you want to be different?
Thank you. Why can't you just accept me as that?
What do we do now?
What do we do now?
With our sons, with your son, with my son.
Jesus. Whew. Yeah, I can't put it as a whole. Yeah. I think I'm not going to put it as a whole. But I chose to be open enough with my son and to expose my son.
Vulnerability?
Yeah. Also. He doesn't see me cry, though. But I'm just saying, I show him emotion. So I tell him I love you. You know what I'm saying? I sit with him and I cuddle with him. We sit on the couch together. He doesn't sit on another couch. We sit on the couch together. He's here and we watch TV together. So that is critical because he feels the love. Even though I don't, that's my vulnerability moment. You know, so I don't have to cry for him to see that.
Yeah.
I also expose him to a lot of other options that I didn't get. So, and not material stuff. So it's exposure to...
It's not only material, guys.
Yeah. It's exposure to a lot of things. How to think, how to behave, how to do... And I do them so he can see that if my dad is doing it, then I have to do it as well. And that is helping him shape of how he thinks and how he's going to be in the future. But I can't give it a holistic answer to say where do we go from here, because in a different household is different. It's a different ball game. That household still has anger. That household still the dad is still abusive to the mom, and that's what the child sees. So I can't tell the dad what to do in their household.
I feel that our generation of men, quite a big chunk of you guys, are starting to understand. I'm seeing a lot of men around me who are actively involved in their sons' and daughters' lives, in their children's lives. I'm seeing a lot more dads who, even though they are not a part of the mother's lives, go and get their kids and hang out with their kids and play with their kids. And I'm seeing it more and more and more and more.
I think also, and to give women props as well, the pressure of not wanting to be called a dog also puts you in that space where you are trying to prove that I can be a better man.
Yeah.
But so that push and that nudge sometimes is also needed.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say in totality that being called trash and a dog hasn't had its impact, because sometimes some of them are doing what you're talking about because they don't want to be called names, you know, and some of them are doing it genuinely. So let's also look at it from that point of view as well. I know a lot of people who would take their child to school and everything else, but still emotionally they're still broken.
Yeah.
You know, they're still broken. They're just doing it because they don't want to seem in public as the dog or the
Isn't
trash.
that a trying as well, though?
It is.
Even if you're broken, you're still trying.
It is. And I think that is a step of realization.
Yeah.
You know, you've been nudged and you realize that now you're doing something about it.
Yeah.
And that's the process.
Yeah.
You know, once you get here, you become addicted. You become addicted to this process, and you never want to let go.
Yeah.
And then we become better fathers, and then our sons become better sons, because it's a ripple effect.
Yes.
So eventually we'll get there, but
in the meantime, ladies,
we will have to go through what we are going through, unfortunately.
Brian, I love you.
Yeah.
As I always have. You're like one of my first crushes.
I told you first time I heard about it today. So I'm not going to take it because it's been how many years now?
Brian, everybody had a crush on you, so I wasn't going to tell you ever.
Oh.
I was just like, quiet.
Jesus.
But thank you so much. Please carry on being you.
I will.
And sending all my love.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for allowing me into your homes. Please remember that it is not about the how. However, if you take the first step, you will find support and you will be supported to get to your end goal. Ngithanda nonke emakhaya. Makube nothando noxolo. High Tea with Noni, in association with Kericho Gold Tea, supplied by Love Tea Time.